Today on the Daily Scoop podcast from the Scoop News Group, HHS, Education, and the IRS are among the agencies impacted by the Trump administration's RIFs during the federal shutdown, and why AI risks can't be avoided and must be managed, according to a top NIST official. It's Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast, where you'll hear the latest news and trends facing government leaders. I'm the host of the Daily Scoop podcast, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for joining me. And now let's dive into the day's top headlines. The Trump administration pushed forward last Friday with plans to fire federal employees amid the government shutdown, directing reductions in force at the Departments of Health and Human Services, Education, and Housing and Urban Development, among other agencies. Prior to and during the current shutdown, the White House repeatedly threatened to lay off additional federal workers in a bid to further its efforts to shrink the size of the government. The Trump administration maintains that Democrats are to blame for the shutdown, though Democrats contend that a spending bill from Republicans, who control all levers of power, wouldn't adequately fund health care for Americans. Russell Vought, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, posted on X early Friday afternoon that the, quote, RIFs have begun, unquote, without offering additional details. An OMB spokesperson told FedScoop that the RIFs began and are substantial. In a preview of his discussions with Vought last week, President Donald Trump said in a post to his social media platform, Truth Social, that the RIFs would target Democrat agencies, calling them, quote, a political scam. According to a court filing from the Trump administration late Friday, at least 4,100 federal workers across 8 federal agencies may have been sent RIF notices, with the bulk of staff reductions at HHS, with 1,100 to 1,200 workers impacted, and the Department of Treasury, with 1,446 workers impacted. The legal declaration by OMB senior advisor Stephen Billy came in a challenge by unions to the administration's communication, urging agencies to consider RIFs ahead of the shutdown. That lawsuit alleged that OMB and the Office of Personnel Management violated the Federal Administrative Procedure Law and asked the court to issue injunctive relief. According to Billy, the figures provided were estimates of the number of workers at each agency who may have received notices on Friday. More, however, could be coming. Other agencies that are defendants in the lawsuit, quote, are making pre-decisional assessments regarding offices and subdivisions that may be considered for potential RIFs based on the criteria outlined in the OMB lapse email, Billy said, though he added that he wasn't aware of any other agencies that have made final decisions. Now moving on to other news. Deploying artificial intelligence requires taking on the right amount of risk to achieve a desired end result, a National Institute of Standards and Technology official who worked on its risk management framework for the technology said on a panel last week. While federal agencies, and particularly IT functions, are generally risk-averse, risks can't entirely be avoided with AI, Martin Stanley, an AI and cyber research at the Commerce Department Standards Agency, said during a FedInsider panel on intelligent government last week. Stanley said, quote, you have to manage risks, number one, adding that benefits from the technology are compelling enough that, quote, you have to go looking to achieve those, unquote. Stanley's comments came in response to a question about how the federal government compares to other sectors that have been doing risk management for longer, such as financial services. On that point specifically, he said the NIST AI risk management framework, quote, shares a lot of DNA, unquote, with Federal Reserve guidance on algorithmic models in financial services. He said NIST attempted to leverage those approaches in the same plain, simple language. He said, quote, we talk about risks, we talk about likelihoods, and we talk about impacts, both positive and negative, so that you can build this trade space where you are taking on the right amount of risk to achieve a benefit, unquote. His comments come as many agencies across the government have publicly disclosed how they're governing their use of the growing technology under the Trump administration. Under an Office of Management and Budget memo, which preserved many aspects of the Biden administration's approach, agencies were required by the end of September to publish both plans to comply with the guidance as well as strategies on how to deploy the technology. Those documents included agency approaches to risk management, such as processes for designating use cases as high impact, a designation under the memo for certain deployments that impact rights and safety and, as a result, require specific risk management practices. For more news at the intersection of the federal government and technology, make sure to visit fedscoop.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Daily Scoop podcast, available on all podcast platforms. If you've already rated the podcast on your platform of choice, thanks so much. High ratings and good reviews of the show help more people to find it. The Daily Scoop podcast is a production of the Scoop News Group in Washington, D.C. Adam Butler and Carlin Fisher help put the show together, and the entire Scoop News Group team contributes. We'll be back tomorrow with more top headlines. Until then, I'm your host, as always, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for listening.